One evening, as the golden hues of the setting sun bathed the temple courtyard in warm light, a young man sat before a wise Buddhist monk. The air was still, yet his heart was anything but. It carried the weight of endless questions, questions that had haunted him for years. His life, on the surface, was enviable. He had a well-paying job, a beautiful home, and a network of friends. Yet, despite having everything that society defined as success, he felt trapped in an invisible cage of anxiety, dissatisfaction, and restlessness. His mind was never still. The moment one desire was fulfilled, another took its place. When things were going well, he feared they wouldn't last. When challenges arose, he felt overwhelmed by the weight of his own thoughts. Every day felt like a battle between expectations and reality, between longing and discontent. Looking into the monk's serene face, he finally voiced the question that had been gnawing at him. Why do I feel so restless and discontented, even when I have everything I once wished for? The monk, with a gentle smile, replied, because your mind is your worst enemy. The young man was startled. But isn't the mind what allows me to think, plan, and solve problems? The monk nodded. Yes, but an untamed mind is like a wild elephant. It tramples over everything, causing destruction. Left uncontrolled, it leads to suffering, anxiety, and confusion. Only when the mind is trained does it become your greatest ally. The young man pondered this. He had always believed that intelligence and logic were the keys to success. Yet, no amount of planning or problem-solving had freed him from the turmoil within. If anything, the more he tried to control life, the more anxious he became. The monk's words carried a truth that resonated deeply, that the source of suffering was not the world around him, but his own mind's inability to remain still. He realized that his thoughts dictated his happiness, his emotions shaped his reality, and his mind was the filter through which he experienced everything. If his mind was clouded by fear, doubt, and dissatisfaction, then no amount of external success could bring him peace. The Buddha understood this long ago. He taught that the mind, left unchecked, becomes our own worst enemy, creating illusions, clinging to desires, and resisting the natural flow of life. But if the mind can be trained, it becomes our greatest friend, a source of wisdom and tranquility. So, how does one tame the restless mind? Let's explore this question through a story that illustrates its true nature. The story of the fearful rabbit. Deep in the heart of an ancient forest, where towering trees whispered secrets to the wind, lived a little rabbit named Chandra. Unlike the other animals who roamed the woods freely, Chandra was always on edge. His tiny heart raced at the slightest rustle of leaves. His ears twitched at every unfamiliar sound. He was afraid of the dark, afraid of the unknown, afraid of dangers that lurked in the shadows, real or imagined. While the other rabbits played in the open meadows, Chandra remained close to the thickets, always seeking shelter. His mind was a constant storm of worry. What if a fox was nearby? What if an eagle was watching from above? What if something terrible happened? He lived not in the present moment, but in an endless cycle of fear. One fateful afternoon, as Chandra rested beneath a great banyan tree, a loud noise shattered the stillness. Crack! It echoed through the forest like the snap of a predator's jaw. His heart pounded in his chest. Without a second thought, he bolted, his legs carrying him as fast as they could. As he sprinted through the woods, he passed a deer grazing by the river. Alarmed by the rabbit's frantic escape, the deer called out, "Chandra, what are you running from?" Gasping for breath, Chandra cried, "I heard a terrible sound. Something is coming to harm me." The deer's ears flicked up in alert. If the rabbit was afraid, there must be danger nearby. Without questioning, the deer ran too. A boar saw them racing through the underbrush. "What's happening?" he asked. The rabbit heard something dangerous, the deer shouted. Without hesitation, the boar turned and fled as well. One by one, more and more animals joined in. their fear spreading like wildfire. The ground trembled under their frantic stampede. None of them knew what they were running from, only that they had to escape. Just as they reached the edge of the forest, an old, wise lion stepped into their path. With a mighty roar, he commanded him to stop. The animals, startled, skidded to a halt, panting and trembling. The lion's piercing eyes scanned the herd. "What is the danger that has driven you all to such panic?" Chandra, still trembling, stepped forward and explained, "I heard a loud, terrifying sound. I was certain something was coming to attack me." The lion, with a look of curiosity, nodded, "Then let us investigate." With slow, deliberate steps, the lion led Chandra back to the banyan tree. The rabbit's ears were still twitching, his body tense. He braced himself for the worst. But as they arrived, the lion merely chuckled. Lying on the ground was a single fruit, freshly fallen from the tree. It had been the source of the noise. Turning to Chandra, the lion said, "You are running from something that does not exist. Your own fear is the true danger." Chandra stared at the fallen fruit, his mind racing. He had let his fear dictate his actions, spreading panic not only to himself but to everyone around him. His terror had been real, but the threat had not. This story is a powerful metaphor for how our minds work. How often do we, like Chandra, let our fears control us? We imagine dangers that are not there, exaggerate problems, and let anxiety push us into blind reactions. A single troubling thought can set off a cascade of panic, leading us to decisions driven by fear rather than wisdom. The Buddha understood this well. He taught that the mind, when left unchecked, becomes our greatest enemy, trapping us in cycles of fear and worry. But, just like Chandra, we can learn to pause, to question our thoughts, and to recognize that many of our fears exist only within our own minds. The key to freedom is not running from fear, but seeing it clearly for what it truly is. The root of suffering, attachment and desire. One of the greatest sources of human suffering lies in attachment, our deep craving for things, people, and experiences that we believe will bring us happiness. We chase after success, love, recognition, and material wealth, hoping that once we attain them, we will finally feel fulfilled. But more often than not, when we get what we want, we find ourselves restless again, searching for the next thing. The Buddha called this tanha, or craving, an insatiable thirst that keeps us trapped in cycles of dissatisfaction. It is the belief that if only we could have this or that, we would be happy, but the moment we grasp it, the happiness fades, and a new desire takes its place. The man who had everything but peace. Let's consider the story of Arjun, a man who had spent his entire life working tirelessly to build a successful career. From a young age, he had one goal: to be rich and respected. He sacrificed time with his family, worked late nights, and made countless personal compromises, all for the sake of his ambition. And he succeeded. By the time he reached his 40s, he had amassed wealth beyond his dreams. He lived in a luxurious home, drove the finest car, and wore the most expensive suits. People admired him, respected him, even envied him. Yet, despite all this, Arjun was deeply anxious. He constantly feared losing what he had worked so hard for. He checked the stock market obsessively, worried about economic downturns, and lost sleep over the smallest setbacks in his business. He had thought that once he achieved success, he would be free, but instead, he found himself trapped, his happiness tied to numbers in a bank account, his peace held hostage by his attachment to material security. No matter how much he had, it was never enough. If his business did well, he worried about maintaining it. If a competitor threatened his position, he felt waves of panic. The very thing he believed would bring him happiness had become the source of his suffering. One evening, in desperation, Arjun sought out a wise monk. "I have everything I ever wanted," he confessed, "but I am not at peace. What am I doing wrong?" The monk smiled and said, You suffer because you hold too tightly to things that were never meant to be permanent. The impermanence of all things. The Buddha taught that everything in life is impermanent. People change, relationships shift, material things decay, and circumstances evolve. If we base our happiness on things that are constantly shifting, we will always be disappointed. Imagine building a sandcastle on the beach. You might spend hours shaping it, making it perfect, but no matter how strong you build it, the waves will eventually come and wash it away. If you have attached your happiness to the sandcastle, you will feel devastated when it is gone. But if you understand from the beginning that it was never meant to last, you can enjoy the process of building it without clinging to the outcome. Life is like that. Everything we hold onto, our youth, our possessions, even our relationships, will eventually change. Attachment creates suffering because it makes us resist the natural flow of life. This does not mean we should not care or enjoy life. Rather, it means we should appreciate things without clinging to them. When we stop grasping at life, fearing its changes, we can begin to truly enjoy each moment as it is. Letting go and finding true peace. One day, Arjun sat by a river, reflecting on the monk's words. He watched as the water flowed effortlessly, moving around rocks, changing course, never resisting. It did not try to hold onto one shape or direction, it simply flowed. At that moment, he understood. True peace does not come from accumulating or controlling. It comes from letting go. From that day on, Arjun still worked hard, but he no longer tied his happiness to his success. He learned to appreciate his wealth without fearing its loss. He spent time with loved ones without expecting them to always be there. He embraced life as it was, unpredictable, ever-changing, and beautiful in its impermanence. The Buddha's wisdom is clear. Suffering is not caused by what we have or do not have, but by our attachment to things that are not meant to last. The moment we release our grasp and accept impermanence, we free ourselves from unnecessary suffering. Happiness is not found in holding on, it is found in learning to let go. The power of mindfulness. So how do we overcome the restless mind? How do we free ourselves from the endless cycle of worries, anxieties, and regrets that pull us away from the present moment? The Buddha offered a simple yet profound solution. Mindfulness, sati, the practice of being fully present. Mindfulness is not just a meditation practice, it is a way of life. It means learning to observe our thoughts without getting entangled in them, to witness our emotions without being controlled by them, and to experience life as it unfolds, rather than through the lens of our fears and expectations. But what does mindfulness truly mean? The river of thoughts. Imagine you are standing beside a flowing river. The water moves constantly, carrying leaves and twigs downstream. Your thoughts are like these leaves, always drifting, always changing. Most of us, however, do not simply watch the river. Instead, we jump in, grasping at every leaf, trying to control which ones stay and which ones go. We cling to pleasant thoughts and push away uncomfortable ones, struggling against the natural flow of the mind. This is why we suffer. Instead of letting our thoughts pass, we get swept away by them. With mindfulness, however, we do something different. Instead of jumping in, we stand on the riverbank. We observe the leaves floating by, knowing that they are not permanent, that they do not define us. A thought appears, I'm not good enough, but instead of engaging with it, we acknowledge it and let it drift away. Another thought arises, what if I fail? But instead of reacting with fear, we simply notice it and let it go. This shift in awareness changes everything. When we become the observer rather than the participant, the mind loses its power over us. We are no longer controlled by every passing worry or regret. A moment of awakening. I once had an experience that made this lesson clear. One afternoon, I was walking through a peaceful garden. Birds were singing, the sun was warm on my skin, and a soft breeze rustled the leaves. It was a moment of beauty, a moment to be enjoyed. Yet, where was my mind? It was not in the garden. It was busy replaying past mistakes, reliving conversations I wished had gone differently, worrying about things that had not yet happened. My body was in the present, but my mind was lost in the past and future. Then, something shifted. I noticed a small butterfly landing on a nearby flower. Its delicate wings shimmered in the sunlight. It was so simple, yet so perfect. I took a deep breath. I noticed the scent of the flowers. I felt the warmth of the sun. I heard the sound of the wind moving through the trees. In that moment, all worries faded away. It was not that my problems had disappeared, but my mind had stopped clinging to them. I had stepped out of my thoughts and into reality. This is the power of mindfulness. Mindfulness as a way of life. Many people think mindfulness is something that happens only in meditation, but it is something we can practice in every moment of our lives. When eating, we can taste our food fully instead of mindlessly scrolling through our phones. When walking, we can feel the ground beneath our feet instead of rushing to our next destination. When listening, we can truly hear instead of just waiting for our turn to speak. Each moment of mindfulness is a moment of freedom, a moment where we step out of the prison of the mind and into the richness of life itself. The Buddha did not teach mindfulness to make life perfect, but to help us see that life is already perfect when we stop resisting it. So the question is, are you living in your thoughts, or are you truly living? The Eightfold Path, training the mind for peace. The Buddha not only diagnosed the problem of the restless mind, but also provided a clear path to liberation, the Eightfold Path. This is not merely a set of rules but a guide to transforming our thoughts, words, and actions so that we may achieve true peace. It is often said that the mind, when left untrained, is like a wild horse, unpredictable, untamed, and destructive, but when disciplined with wisdom, the same mind becomes a powerful tool for inner peace and enlightenment. The Eightfold Path offers a way to tame this wild mind, turning it from our worst enemy into our greatest ally. To truly understand this path, let's explore each step, not as abstract teachings, but as practices we can apply in our daily lives. 1. Right understanding, samadhi, seeing life clearly. Imagine a man lost in a thick fog, unable to see the path before him. This is how most of us live, blindly reacting to life without understanding its deeper truths. Right understanding is about seeing things as they are, not as we want them to be. It means recognizing that suffering exists, that attachment leads to pain, and that peace comes from within. When we understand that everything is impermanent, we stop clinging. When we see that happiness cannot be found in external things, we stop searching in the wrong places. This wisdom is the first step toward peace. 2. Right intention, samma sankappa, cultivating a pure mind. Once we see clearly, we must set the right intention. A mind driven by greed, hatred, or delusion leads to suffering, but a mind guided by kindness, compassion, and non-attachment brings peace. Think of a farmer planting seeds. If he plants weeds, he cannot expect a field of flowers. Our thoughts are the same. What we cultivate in our minds determines the quality of our lives. Right intention is the commitment to plant seeds of love, rather than fear, of generosity, rather than attachment. 3. Right speech, samma vaka, the power of words. Words are like arrows, they can wound, or they can heal. Right speech means speaking truthfully, kindly, and wisely. The Buddha taught that harsh words create suffering, for both the speaker and the listener. But words spoken with compassion can bring comfort, healing, and understanding. Before speaking, we can ask, is it true? Is it kind? Is it necessary? If the answer is no, silence may be the wiser path. 4. Right action, samma kammanta, living ethically. Right action is about aligning our actions with our values. It means avoiding harm, whether to others or to ourselves. This includes practicing non-violence, honesty, and integrity. If we harm others, we create suffering. If we live with integrity, we create peace, not just for the world, but within ourselves. The Buddha taught that what we do matters, not because of divine punishment, but because our actions shape our reality. 5. Right livelihood, samma ajiva, work that supports, not harms. Our work is not just a means of survival, it is part of our spiritual path. Right livelihood means earning a living in a way that benefits, rather than harms. A butcher, a weapons dealer, or a person who profits from deception may succeed financially but will struggle to find inner peace. The Buddha encouraged us to choose work that aligns with compassion and honesty, for our occupation also shapes our mind. 6. Right effort, samma vayama, the discipline of the mind. The mind, like a garden, requires care. Left unchecked, weeds of negativity grow. Right effort means removing harmful thoughts and cultivating beneficial ones. This is not about suppressing thoughts, but about choosing where to focus our energy. When we water seeds of anger, they grow. When we nurture patience, love, and joy, they flourish. Effort is the fuel for transformation. 7. Right mindfulness, samma sati, being fully present. Right mindfulness is the ability to observe our thoughts and emotions without attachment. It is the practice of living in the present, rather than being lost in the past or future. Whether we are eating, walking, or speaking, mindfulness allows us to experience life fully rather than merely existing in it. The restless mind is like a stormy sea, but mindfulness is the stillness beneath the waves. 8. Right concentration, samma samadhi, the power of meditation. Right concentration is the practice of meditation, the training of the mind to become steady, focused, and clear. Imagine a candle flame flickering in the wind. This is the ordinary mind, distracted, scattered, but when the wind calms, the flame becomes steady. This is the mind in deep meditation, peaceful, luminous, free. Through meditation, we cultivate inner stillness, allowing wisdom to arise. The mind as an ally. By following these 8 steps, we transform the mind from a source of suffering into a source of liberation. The restless, fearful mind is no longer an enemy, but a companion on the path to peace. The Buddha did not give these teachings as theory, they are meant to be lived. The question is, will you begin the journey? Conclusion: making the mind our friend. Let's return to the young man who sought wisdom from the monk. After hearing the monk's teachings, he sat in silence, reflecting on the weight of the words he had just received. He had spent his entire life battling his own thoughts, chasing desires, avoiding discomfort, and reacting to every fleeting emotion. He now understood that his suffering did not come from the external world but from within his own mind. With a deep breath, he asked, "So, how do I make my mind my friend instead of my enemy?" The monk smiled gently, as if he had heard this question countless times before. By practicing mindfulness, letting go of attachments, and walking the path of wisdom. The answer was simple, yet profound. Determined to change, the young man began his journey of transformation. He started meditating daily, not to escape his thoughts, but to observe them without judgment. He practiced mindfulness in everything he did, eating, walking, listening, learning to be fully present in each moment. He no longer reacted impulsively to emotions but watched them arise and pass like waves in the ocean. Slowly, something shifted. The restless chatter in his mind quieted. His anxieties began to fade. He no longer feared the impermanence of life but embraced it with acceptance. The very mind that had once been his greatest enemy was now his greatest ally. This is the journey we all must take. Our suffering does not come from the world but from how we perceive it. An untrained mind pulls us into cycles of craving, fear, and dissatisfaction, but with awareness, discipline, and wisdom, we can reclaim control. We can step out of the storm of thoughts and into the vast, open space of inner peace. The Buddha's teachings are not meant to be mere philosophy, but a practical guide, a way to free ourselves from unnecessary suffering. So now, ask yourself, is your mind your enemy, or have you begun the journey to make it your greatest friend? The choice is yours. If you found this teaching insightful, remember to subscribe for more wisdom on mindfulness, self-awareness, and inner peace. Share this journey with others, and together, let us walk the path of awakening. May your journey be filled with clarity, serenity, and wisdom. May peace be with you.